Hai, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My group and I, which consists of Huda Assyakirah binti Abdul Latif, Nurain Natasha binti Abdul Rahman, and me, Umi Kalsom Abd Hamid, we talk about ethical arguments and ethical reasoning. First of all, I will talk about ethical arguments. The overview, which is the differences between right and wrong, good and bad, have separate meaning. For example, good and bad. The sunshine is good because it brings pleasure, and cancer is bad because it brings pain and death. Right and wrong, for example, the ethical question is not whether a person fulfills the purposes of the class terrorist, but whether it is wrong for such a class to exist. Next, we move to the major ethical system, which are first, consequences as the base of ethics and principles as the base of ethics. Consequences as the base of ethics, which is utilitarianism, is used to describe predicting consequences to determine the mortality of a proposed action, and action is morally right if it produces a greater net value than any other alternative action. What about principle as the base of ethics? Any ethical base on principle will ultimately rest on moral tenets that we are duty-bound to uphold, no matter what the consequences. Sometimes the moral tenets come from the religious faith. For example, the Ten Commandments. Next, we move to the constructing an ethical argument, which are first, the principle-based frame, and second, consequence-based frame. What is principle-based frame? An act is right or wrong because it follows or violates principles A, B, and C. For example, the death penalty is wrong because it violates the principle of the sanctity of human life. In other words, the arguer's duty is to make clear what principle is being evoked, and then to show why this principle is more important than opposing principles. What about consequences-based frame? An act is right or wrong because it will lead to consequences A, B, and C, which are good or bad. For example, the capital punishment is wrong because it leads to the possibility of executing an innocent person. In other words, this argument looks at the consequences of a decision and measures the positive benefits against the negative costs. Next, we move to common problems in making evaluation arguments. First, the problem of standards. We experience the dilemma of the commonplace versus the ideal all the time. Is it better to promote abstinence or use protection for self-sex? Where is the commonplace and the ideal? Second, the problem of mitigating circumstances, which occurs when arguers claim that unusual circumstances should alter our usual standards of judgment. Is turning your paper in late justified by the fact that you have to care for a child? Next, the third one, the problem of choosing between two goods or two bads. Being forced to deliberate between two choices that has both benefits and consequences. For example, putting your parents in nursing home or letting them stay at home when they have become a danger to themselves. Fourth, the problem of seductive empirical measures, which means they seduce us into believing that we must have a certain criteria to meet our goals and standards, whether it is based on our GPA or our combined scores in an athletic competition. And the last one, the problem of cost, which means we can avoid the problem of cost somewhat by placing items into different classes on the basis of cost. For example, a Mercedes will exceed a Kia on almost any criterion, but the Kia is more affordable.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Natasha binti Abdul Rahman, and today I would like to discuss about ethical reasoning. What is ethical reasoning? Firstly, I will define what reasoning means. The definition of reasoning is the generation or evaluation of claim in relation to their supporting argument and evidence. The ability To reason has a fundamental impact on one's ability to learn new information and experience, because reasoning skill determine how people comprehend, evaluate, and explain an argument. Reasoning skills are also crucial for being able to generate and maintain viewpoint or belief that are coherent with and justified by relevant knowledge. And then, what is ethical reasoning? Ethical reasoning pertains to the right and wrong of human conduct. Each person has standards that are defined by their personal value, which come into play when the person faces certain dilemma or decision. Commonly, ethical differences occur as a result of individual interpretation of a subject or event, or may be political or religious in nature. To explore the concept, consider the following ethical reasoning definition. Okay, most human behavior has consequences for the welfare of others, even for society as a whole. Individuals are able to act in such a way to enhance or decrease the quality of their life of others, and generally know the differences between helping and harming. Ethical reasoning holds two roles in life. Firstly, highlighting acts that enhance the well-being of others, and secondly, highlighting acts that harm the well-being of other people. When an act enhances the well-being of others, it is worthy of praise from others. But when an act harms or decreases the well-being of others, it is worthy of criticism. For many people, the desire to receive thus response from others guide the development of their personal set of ethical standards. Next, I will explain about ethical reasoning and individual right. In civil society, people have individual right, but it is vital that this right coincide with the collective right of society as a whole. A person being denied personal right due to the greatest good of society may feel the decision conflict with his own ethical reasoning. But while some people believe that a person's individual right should be preserved regardless of the benefit or harm to society, others deem is more important than the common good and justice to be considered in a civil society. These opposing beliefs are a result of individual ethical reasoning. A good ethical reasoner must be able to reason logically, to avoid fallacies and inconsistencies, to clarify and analyze concepts, to construct and assess argument and position. They require a certain body of knowledge of the assumption, consequences, and criticism of different position of view, knowledge of type of argument, and likely problem, example like fallacies, like false dichotomy, and ambiguity of people. They must be committed to certain value associated with good reasoning, such as commitment to understand issues and view, commitment to reason support and evaluation of belief or claim, willingness to question key assumption and challenge received wisdom, and lastly, interest in finding solution to philosophical question and problem.
Thank you, Sister Ain, for the explanation. Now I will move to the ethical reasoning and the law. The government creates and enforces laws in order to protect the citizens and the unity of society. These laws carry punishments those who violate them in the form of fines, community service, probation, and imprisonment. Each individual develops his own core values and ethical reasoning according to his view of integrity and honesty and ability to look past the self-justification and self-deception common to all people. Acts that have been deemed illegal may not coincide with an individual's personal ethical beliefs and vice versa. Laws are often created out of widespread social convention, whether they are seen to be fair and ethical by all or not. Some people strongly believe that certain acts are unethical and should therefore be made illegal. Others find certain laws to be unethical according to their own reasoning and feel they are a hindrance to their personal human rights. We can take a look at an example. Okay, Bob believes that the death penalty is unethical and that it violates human rights. In the jurisdiction in which he resides, however, the death penalty is a punishment occasionally handed down by the judicial system. While Bob does not believe that the death penalty is ethical, the law was made on the belief that it is necessary for the greater good of society. Next, ethical decisions in legal system. On occasion, those who work in law enforcement and the legal system find that the ethical decisions they are required to make on a subject conflicts with the law. This may occur, for example, when a judge finds that the resolution of a case, as dictated by law, conflicts with his personal ethical reasoning. In such a case, the judge must follow the laws of the jurisdiction, even if it seems to create a moral dilemma for him personally. For institutional ethics, in some instances, individual entities can punish or take corrective actions against a person who has breached the company's ethical code. For example, an accounting firm hires new employees who are required to read and sign the employee handbook. This handbook states that employees must not let their personal bias interfere in any business transactions. Same for the counseling or counselor. If the counselor breached the confidentiality, so the counselor is not ethical or unethical based on the law or legal of the counselor. Then, allowing personal bias or opinion to dictate how a business transaction is done is not necessarily against any law set forth by the government, but it may result in the employee's termination as it violates the company's policy and institutional ethics. In serious cases, the employer may be able to recover damages through a civil lawsuit for such a violation. So, I will explain more further about critical thinking in moral reasoning. So, what are they? So, critical thinking is the engine that drives moral reasoning. It can be traced back to the work of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. It enables a more rational approach to decision making, requires one to devote time to analyzing and evaluating the ethical dilemma and providing decision for ethical judgments made. Critical thinking is a skill that can be learned. It involves, to some extent, learning to know when to question something and what sort of questions to ask. Critical thinking begins with something to critically think about, knowledge of the subject to be evaluated, principles and practices, understanding of moral theories. Critical thinking requires an ability to identify problems and together analyze and synthesize all relevant information relating to the problem. It also requires an ability to evaluate available alternatives and decisions to be made. The following list identifies the components of critical thinking that are important of moral reasoning. The first one is acquisition of knowledge and an understanding of the context of ethical situation. Then, critical analysis of that knowledge and consideration of ethical alternatives. And The third one is decision based on available alternatives. These are the model of moral reasoning. First, situation definition, and then second, analysis, and the last one is decisions. So the first one is situation definition. So I will explain about it. So, situation definition: acquire knowledge and facts, an understanding of the context of the ethical dilemma, and then understand the situation or subjects to be evaluated. Okay. First, description of facts. Provide facts and details of the ethical situation. This may include, where possible, the original purpose or intent of the action. Then, identification of principles and values. Identify relevant principles and values in an ethical dilemma, which is principles vary according to situation. For example, right to privacy, justice, fairness, right to life, right to information, and loyalty. Then the last one is statement of ethical issue or question. Provide a clear statement of the ethical question, and the question must be specific. For example, it is permissible for public communicators to withhold information in their communication? That is an example. After we identify the situation, then we analyze. Okay, what is analysis? Analysis is identify the issues, information and assumptions surrounding the problem, examine the situation, and evaluate the ethical alternatives, like weighing of competing principles and values. Examine the situation and identify conflicting principles and values. Then, consideration of external factors, like identify and understand external factors that may influence ethical decision making. For example, company policies, legal constraints, precedents, and political climate. And then, examination of duties to various parties. For example, examine the standards of ethical conduct expected of a particular role and the moral duties governing behavior. The last one is discussion of applicable ethical theories. Evaluate ethical theories that you could apply in a moral dilemma. Look at the issue from different ethical perspectives and identify the most appropriate ethical judgment. Okay, after we know the situation of ethical dilemma, then we made analysis. After we made analysis, of course, we made a decision of certain ethical issue. So, rendering of moral agents decision. Defense of that decision-based open moral theory. Examine alternative and reach a conclusion. Then use available information to make a decision and defend decision based on situation definition, situation analysis, as well as moral theory. So, I think that's all from us. Thank you for listening.